joining us now, Dr. Abhishek Manu Singhvi. He's a three-time sitting MP, a jurist, a senior Congress leader. Thanks, sir, very much for being with us, and the former Additional Solicitor General of India. Dr. Singhvi, was there anything, if I was to ask you about your top two takeaways of this budget, whichever way you feel about it, what would those be?
Well, unfortunately, Vishnu, the top two takeaways would be negative. One, the only charitable thing I can find about this budget and this budget speech is its brevity. It was mercifully short. And secondly, I think above all, the negative is that you mention all and sundry, including caste, in your speech. You don't mention unemployment. My colleagues have given you figures in the day. I won't bore you with that. Unemployment urban, unemployment rural, unemployment below 25-year graduates, unemployment 30 to 35-year graduates. These are galloping figures. They are shameful figures. And to give homilies about lots and lots of things, including a kind of a self-congratulatory pat on the back and, of course, the compulsory obeisance to the Prime Minister, it sounds very empty and hollow when you compare it with these figures.
But Dr. Singhvi, the question will also be asked that that the government has been emphasizing on saturation of its schemes. Shouldn't that be seen as secularism in action?
Well, I like to see secularism in action, things which you see on the streets and read in the newspapers every day. That is secularism in action for me. How you treat inclusively or otherwise the minorities, how they are threatened with sedition, how they live in fear, etc., etc. I don't think that's a fair definition of secularism. But talking of your word saturation, I have here, interestingly, Maria, a very, very long list of underutilized, underspent funds on major schemes. This is something which has escaped the attention of many commentators today. The list runs from Ayushman Bharat Mission, Swachh Bharat Mission, Grameen, Urban, Pradhan Mantri Ayushman Bharat, modernization of police forces. I can go on and on, 20 items I have here. There are underspendings and underutilization from 25% to 33%, sometimes even 40%. Now that is not the point, is not only the figures. The point is it shows a complete mismatch in the design, in the allocation, and it shows more seriously a very inefficient utilization. You block funds, you allocate funds, and you're not able to use them. So where is the saturation?
But Dr. Singhvi, if I may, I wanted to come back to the point on the lack of the mention of the word unemployment in this brief speech. I would suggest the government would counter that by saying, number one, 25 crore people have been elevated from multidimensional poverty in 10 years, number one. Number two, Skill India has trained 1.4 lakh youth. The Skill India mission has upskilled 54 lakh people. And number three, when you're looking at a 1 lakh crore fund for startups and people with innovative ideas, then that is something which creates jobs, employment. So if they've not spoken about unemployment, I seem to have identified areas where employment generation would take place.
Okay, now let's look at it one by one. Your first point, what was the one you mentioned first?
First one was poverty. It's not linked directly.
Okay, poverty. Now poverty, very interesting. First and foremost, this is very typical of this government. You redefine the rules of the game as the game is in progress. So first you redefine and define differently poverty. You cannot handle the figures by which the highest ever upliftment out of our BPL line since independence occurred between 2004 and 2014. There are established published figures. We lifted crores on the old definition of poverty. Now you can't compare with that because you lose out. So what you do is you change the definition to multidimensional. Now first of all, therefore you're not able to compare apples with apples, oranges with oranges. Multidimensional is far more subjective. I'm not saying people have not been lifted out of poverty, but multidimensional poverty is a self-serving, very subjective parameter. Mm-hmm. Then I want you to also, on your second point,
skill development.
Skill development. Now let's just consider these four figures, which my colleague has given you today. 15 to 29 years is 10% average. 13% in urban, 8% in rural, average 10% unemployment. Graduates under 25 is 42%. What are you talking of skill India? Which skill? The skill of being unemployed.
No, but sir, I'm not sure you can link this to unemployment when the
No, you
effort is to
can,
create.
you can.
I
No, you
understand
can.
the point you're making about unemployment, but if
I'll tell
1.4
you.
crore youth have been trained in this finite period, they've been given additional skills. They aren't, skills which help them to get jobs, which
I'll tell
people
you.
who don't go to colleges or universities, have
No,
typically not
these are
gained. Then what's wrong with
okay.
that?
First thing, Shom, these are all old schemes. We have also got them, and all of us are working towards skilling people in vocational spheres.
Yes,
Number two, what is the ultimate object of this skilling people?
employment.
Employment. These people also fall within the overall rubric of the figures I'm giving. So you are making a dent, but it's less than a drop in the
So
ocean.
what you're saying is that people are skilled, but there is no data which has been provided to indicate how many of these skilled people have got a job.
Exactly. And the government takes refuge frequently by telling you they're self-employed. By self-employed, people are also counted in the unemployment figures.
Okay,
But
no,
Dr.
that's an important point. I take that point that there is no data, and that's something we need to come back.
You are not
on.
doing this skilling job, Shom, in the abstract. You are doing it to deal with employment.
Correct.
And overall figures belie. Of course, there is no doubt that Skill India is a very important thing. It's been a program much before the BJP government came in. And everybody should work towards it.
And
but
the
the
third
point
point,
is,
Dr.
it's
Singh,
making a very small dent.
The third point, which was on the 1 lakh crore investment fund, which I would suggest is essentially meant for job creation.
Well, I would concede that this government is doing something in a focused way for infrastructure, especially in the area of roads. But it is not converting to employment because these are proposals, these are plans,
Right.
these are investments in future.
All right,
will
Dr.
start
Singhvi, I'm
them
only
take the
interrupting
word.
you now because I need to just quickly move on. We've got